Only 1% of men study themselves the way a Stoic emperor studies the battlefield, mapping every habit that sabotages presence before the enemy even arrives. Tonight we expose 7 patterns that assassinate attractiveness so quietly most men never know who pulled the trigger. Stay until the final chapter, hit like, subscribe, and share your experience below, because liberation starts when you stop serving habits that betray you. Chapter 1. Being passive. Passivity often passes itself off as agreeableness, but peel back the pleasantry and you discover a quiet dread of steering the wheel. You nod when the waiter suggests the house favorite, even if you loathe buttery Chardonnay. You watch co-workers swipe your ideas during meetings and congratulate them afterward. You treat every "what do you feel like doing tonight" as an exit exam you hope someone else will ace. Slowly, almost invisibly, you exchange personal agency for momentary comfort until the film reel of your life rolls on with you stuck in the audience, not the hero, not even the comic relief, just the unnamed extra who drifts through scenes. Women read this anesthetized drift at an instinctive level. If he won't pilot his own vessel, how will he navigate mine through headwinds and tides? Attraction requires the soft gravity of initiative. Without that pull, interest floats away like a balloon with the string unheld. Stoic philosophy teaches that virtue begins at the fork where you must choose. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the soul becomes dyed by the color of its thoughts, yet thoughts alone won't tint your life unless they crystallize into actions. Refusal to choose is refusal to live. Passivity snuffs out the initial spark of initiative, and once that spark dies, the campfire of leadership goes dark, curiosity shivers and curls inward, and what once passed for charisma bleaches into bade anonymity. You become the man with neutral opinions about music, movies, morality, flexible to fit any atmosphere yet too vaporous to be remembered when lights come back on. Reclaiming assertiveness does not begin with grand gestures or alpha theatrics. It starts with the smallest choices executed consistently. Espresso or drip, choose. Left or right trail, choose. Text her at 8 or shut your phone off and read, choose. Stand up when your name is skipped during credit roll, politely but firmly, I'd like to add something. These micro-decisions are not trivial, they are training sets for bigger lifts. Each one teaches your biology to expect agency, the way muscles adapt to incremental weight. As you integrate decisive moments, posture rearranges, shoulders settle back, gaze clarifies, breathing deepens. Before a single memorable sentence leaves your mouth, friends sense the difference. Strangers give you the half-step of clearance reserved for those who seem to know where they're going. Passivity often hides behind the guise of not wanting to impose, but what it really imposes is the burden of leadership onto everyone else. Your partner ends up quarterbacking dinner, finances, vacation itineraries. Your team picks up slack in crisis because you hung back waiting for clarity that never arrives. Over time, people bypass you reflexively, and the world grows more chaotic, not less, because capable hands remove themselves from the wheel. Stoic thinkers would label that abdication a moral failing, not a personality quirk. Silence, when choice is required, is complicity in disorder. The antidote lies in accepting that decision equals risk, of blame, of regret, of ridicule, but also the only doorway to growth. When you elect the sushi bar and it disappoints, own it without self-loathing. My pick, my lesson. The willingness to shoulder small failures signals robustness, and robustness draws admiration. Women do not need men who never err, they need men who correct course without collapse. Even in courtship, choosing a venue, a topic, a time frame shows you're willing to curate experience rather than outsource enthusiasm. Assertiveness also invigorates curiosity. Once you claim authorship, the blank pages ahead become invitations, not threats. You research neighborhoods before booking that Airbnb, memorize a few phrases of her native language before meeting her family, propose learning tango instead of defaulting to movie night. Initiative multiplies possibilities, and possibilities breed stories rather than regrets. Soon your life repels boredom, a mosaic of deliberate risks that season your conversation far beyond whatever you like. Finally, assertiveness is contagious. When you model decisive calm, indecisive friends calibrate upward, your partner relaxes into her own feminine or creative flow, teams rally around the clarity you provide. The environment shifts because you shifted first. Leadership, once awakened, never fully sleeps again. It senses gaps and steps forward. You may still weigh options, gather input, and pivot, but paralysis is no longer on the menu. So test yourself tonight. Decline the default streaming suggestion and cue a documentary you've been meaning to watch. Plot breakfast before bed. Lay tomorrow's outfit on a chair, not because it matters what you wear, but because it proves who chooses. Decision by decision, you retrieve the pen from fate's hand and write yourself back into the frame where you always belonged, protagonist, not prop, navigator, not cargo. Women and opportunities alike orbit momentum. Become momentum, and passivity dies of neglect. Chapter 2. Poor hygiene. You cannot disguise apathy toward your own body. It clings to you louder than your cologne ever could. Fingernails stained with yesterday's history, breath fermented from skipped flossing, hair matted into the topography left by a pillow instead of a comb. These aren't minor oversights. They are signals, and they speak volumes before your mouth ever moves. They announce to the world that the vessel which holds your thoughts, dreams, and values is being treated like a rental with no deposit. And women, especially women tuned to longevity, discernment, and partnership, read these signs with the precision of survivalists scanning for threat or safety. The Stoics regarded the body not as a source of vanity, but as a structure worthy of stewardship. They trained, groomed, and maintained their physical selves not to win beauty contests, but to remain worthy of the virtue they pursued. They saw the flesh not as distraction, but as the container of reason and will. To let that container decay from neglect wasn't mere laziness, it was sacrilege. A temple of the soul must not fall into disrepair. Poor hygiene, therefore, is more than a surface problem, it's a visible crack in your internal architecture. And that crack shows up everywhere. Scent becomes memory's messenger. The trace of stale sweat mixed with last week's detergent triggers a limbic reaction before logic can offer excuses. Skin left unwashed too long begins to dull, flake, or glisten in all the wrong places. Beard lines blur into overgrowth. Ears carry shadowed grime. These may seem small, but each detail composes a pre-verbal resume. Everyone within 3 feet reads it instantly. Your hygiene is your introduction, more honest than a handshake and far less forgiving. A clean, intentional routine is not about looking polished for others. It's a declaration of self-respect. A morning shower isn't scheduled only for the days when you smell. It's an act of rhythm, a daily practice that says my environment matters because I matter in it. Fragrance should be punctuation, not camouflage. Your scent shouldn't plead for forgiveness or attempt to smother negligence. It should sharpen presence like cologne dusted across a fresh canvas, not layered over yesterday's fatigue. When hygiene lapses, attraction doesn't merely fade, it recoils. Because carelessness in physical presentation hints at deeper layers of carelessness, careless promises, careless parenting, careless planning. A woman thinks, if he can't trim a nail, will he file taxes on time? If he ignores plaque, will he ignore emotional build-up? You may not hear her form the questions, but her body will answer with distance. And the solution is not luxury, it's philosophy. Restoration doesn't require $300 skincare or 10-step regimens. It requires decision, presence, and consistency. Cut your nails every Sunday. Wash your sheets every week. Clean under your nails before you reach for anyone. Condition your hair if it tangles, scrub your tongue like it's a handshake, exfoliate dead skin not to glow but to prove you haven't given up on how you meet the world. Because that's what poor hygiene ultimately broadcasts: quiet surrender. A man who cannot honor his physical shell will not honor shared space. He will leave dishes in the sink and socks on the floor. He will forget the dentist until molars scream. He will turn the bedroom into a locker room. And these choices compound, not just physically, but relationally. A partner doesn't want to become a caretaker, and hygiene negligence starts that slippery shift. On the flip side, a man who is clean, intentionally, not obsessively, stands out not because he sparkles, but because he calms. Fresh breath makes her lean closer. Crisp clothes imply forethought. A groomed beard softens your seriousness. A clean bathroom tells her you don't leave messes for others to find. It's not about seduction, it's about safety, about competence, about showing that what you touch becomes better, not burdened. Hygiene, when disciplined, becomes a silent ambassador of self-mastery. You start noticing your own mood lift after a clean shave. You walk differently in a well-laundered shirt. You speak more clearly when you're hydrated, teeth brushed, skin moisturized. You begin expecting more from your surroundings because you're holding yourself to a higher physical standard. And those around you, especially women, notice. Not because they're measuring you against a GQ spread, but because your presence feels more intentional. In a world of shortcuts and sloppiness, clean men are rare. Stoicism teaches that mastery begins with the mundane. Sweep your temple. Polish the altar. If you want your touch to be trusted, your presence to be welcomed, and your absence to be noticed, start with your skin, your scent, your ritual. Because before she knows your name, she'll smell your intent. Before you touch her hand, you'll leave a print. Make it clean. Make it steady. Make it reflect the man you mean to become. Chapter 3: Negative Attitude. Complaints slip from your tongue like beads on a frayed rosary, traffic that stalls your commute, politics that poison your feed, weather that sabotages hair and mood, a lower back that throbs after years of neglected form, a boss whose praise is rarer than a comet, the bill that always feels heavier than the meal. Each gripe delivers a small jolt of self-righteous relief, but the cumulative effect is corrosive. Negativity drains rooms faster than a blown fuse, forcing everyone nearby to grope through darkness you created. Conversation shortens, laughter throttles, eye contact dodges. People manage their exposure to you the way children skirt the edge of a wasp nest, one wrong vibration and the swarm might buzz. A Stoic confronts adversity but refuses to worship it. Marcus Aurelius jotted observations of plague, mutiny, and betrayal, then asked himself, what is not harmed by this? Your mindset, he implied, is sovereign even when circumstances mutiny. Yet when your default mood is criticism, when sarcasm becomes your native accent, people subconsciously brace for emotional taxation, smiling feels like labor, silence becomes refuge from your forecast of doom. Women, attuned to subtle shifts in relational weather, feel cortisol rise before your sentence ends. That hormone whispers flight, not flirtation. It's the biological echo of ancestral logic. Proximity to perpetual alarm drains resources better spent on survival and joy. Negativity's damage extends inward. Each complaint primes neural pathways for more complaint, as dopamine rewards the familiarity of pattern, not the wisdom of outcome. You begin collecting irritations the way some men collect vinyl, proudly, obsessively, shelves sagging under grievances. The brain, desperate for narrative consistency, highlights evidence that validates its cynical script and filters out counterexamples of beauty, kindness, progress. Soon you inhabit a curated dystopia visible only to you, but you broadcast it through posture, slumped shoulders, tight jaw, micro scowls that confirm your worldview to bystanders. Rewiring starts with gratitude audits, a Stoic ledger kept before the first sip of coffee. Catalog 3 favors life dealt you. Not vague cliches but granular gifts, the barista who spells your name right, the lumbar stretch that eased your spine, the free podcast that taught you compound interest in plain language. By naming the specific, you train perception to scan for nuance rather than generalizing gloom. After 2 weeks, the ritual upgrades to 5 entries, then 10. This is mental resistance training. Each repetition strengthens the muscle of appreciation until spotting good becomes reflexive. Next comes the practice of reframing obstacles as creative prompts. Seneca urged, "Fire tests gold, misfortune tests brave men." Traffic becomes a mobile library, 10 extra minutes to devour an audiobook on negotiation. A downpour converts into a cold exposure challenge and a story worth telling. A harsh email morphs into an exercise in concise empathy. Draft the calmest, helpful reply imaginable, then send, knowing you just proved composure under fire. These refrains aren't delusion, they are authorship. You choose genre, tragedy or hero's journey, every morning. Positivity is not naivete, it is leadership of atmosphere. When setbacks land, you narrate potential, not doom. Colleagues notice your question after a glitch. What opportunity hides in this? Meetings begin to lean hopeful because your tone sets gravitational center. At home, your partner exhales instead of bracing. She speaks vulnerably because she trusts you won't coat her fears with thicker despair. Optimism, practiced consistently, magnetizes more optimism. Invitations arrive, networks widen, because people crave environments where energy flows outward instead of being siphoned. Guard the gains with boundary rituals. Curate inputs as fiercely as you curate macros. Doom scrolling headlines at midnight. Replace with an essay from Montaigne. Gossip-laden group chat. Mute during deep work hours. News can inform without infecting if consumed through scheduled windows and reputable sources. Imagine your mind a garden, weeds sprout uninvited, but you determine whether they root. Physical habits reinforce mental shifts. Morning sunlight spikes serotonin, a natural buffer against irritability. Exercise metabolizes adrenaline so it doesn't ferment into anger. Nutrition stabilizes glucose swings that masquerade as existential dread. Sleep inoculates patience. A well-rested brain interprets ambiguous stimuli as neutral or positive rather than threat. Every rep in the gym, every whole food plate, every 10 p.m. lights out is a vote for emotional equilibrium. Language forms the final frontier. Replace catastrophic adjectives with factual description. Everything is ruined becomes this detail needs adjustment. I always get screwed becomes this negotiation favored them, next time I'll anchor earlier. Semantic precision shrinks problems to workable size and signals to listeners that solutions, not soapboxes, are your aim. Over weeks your diction sharpens and so do others' perceptions. Here is a man who notices cracks but reaches for mortar, not megaphone. Master negativity and you stop draining rooms, you start charging them. Complaints drop in frequency and volume, making their rare appearance credible and catalytic rather than habitual and exhausting. People lean in because your words now forecast possibility. Your presence feels like dawn, not dusk. Women, sensing stable internal weather, allow themselves to forecast a future alongside you without packing emotional umbrellas. Optimism tempered by realism becomes an irresistible offering, a worldview that acknowledges darkness yet invests in light. Ignore this overhaul and you become the lone figure muttering at clouds that never asked your opinion, an energy sink eventually avoided even by those who once cared to listen. Choose leadership of atmosphere and you watch relationships oxygenate, opportunities multiply, and life's inevitable hardships shrink from permanent verdicts into temporary puzzles. The Stoics call this winning the only battle that matters, sovereignty over self, broadcast quietly through a gaze that says, whatever comes, I contain the response. And response, not circumstance, is where true attractiveness lives. Chapter 4: Laziness. Talent rusts when ambition sleeps with the screen still glowing. You promise yourself you'll hit the gym tomorrow, but when tomorrow arrives, the snooze button wins. You start projects with enthusiasm but abandon them halfway when novelty fades and friction sets in. You spend Sundays scrolling through lives you admire instead of constructing one you can claim. Laziness, in its quietest form, doesn't wave a red flag, it whispers maybe later until entire years evaporate. And make no mistake, others notice. Women, especially, don't assess your potential the way you wish, they read your pace. They feel whether your energy is accelerating or idling, and if you're stuck in neutral, they assume you'll drive the relationship the same way. To the Stoics, wasted potential was more than self-betrayal, it was a kind of theft. You don't just rob yourself of progress, you rob the world of the man you were meant to become. You rob your future partner of shared adventures, your family of your full capacity, your community of the leadership it never saw materialize. Every unused day is a draft you never submitted to your legacy. And over time, laziness becomes more than a bad habit, it becomes a reputation. People stop inviting you to things. Opportunities drift to more kinetic hands. Trust fades, not from betrayal, but from erosion. Women attuned to partnership don't just ask, what do you want? They observe, how do you move? Because motion reveals seriousness. If your goals lack fuel, if your ideas remain in notebooks and never touch the calendar, she knows instinctively that co-building a future with you will mean dragging, not dancing. She might enjoy your company for a season, but when the path forks between the man who initiates and the man who waits, she walks toward momentum. Discipline, then, is the highest proof of intention. It trains desire to sign a contract with action. Set the alarm early. Touch the cold floor, even when the blankets plead for 5 more minutes. Execute the first task before checking notifications. These small victories stack like bricks. They don't just build routines, they build identity. And once identity shifts from I should to I do, people feel it before you announce it. You carry a frequency of commitment, and that frequency has gravitational pull. Women sense it the way compasses sense north, it orients them. Laziness is seductive because it feels soft. It's not harsh like failure or painful like rejection. It wraps itself in comfort and postponement. But its damage is deeper because it doesn't just slow you down, it rewires your belief system. You begin to doubt your own promises. You say this week with less conviction. You lower the bar of expectation until life becomes about maintenance, not mastery. And women, who are biologically wired to assess not just now, but tomorrow, 5 years from now, 20, will walk away from a man who's chosen comfort over creation. Combat laziness by embedding friction into your distractions and ease into your efforts. Put the phone in another room during your most focused hour. Lay out gym clothes the night before. Set deadlines with real stakes. Surround yourself with men who raise your standard, not validate your delays. And perhaps most importantly, visualize the pain of regret more vividly than the pain of discipline. The Stoics constantly meditated on death, not morbidly, but as motivation. You have fewer days than you think. Don't spend them circling the drain of potential. Each time you choose effort over ease, momentum compounds. A single finished workout leads to better sleep, which leads to better focus, which leads to sharper conversations, which leads to better impressions, which leads to unexpected doors opening. Suddenly, the version of you that felt stuck 2 weeks ago is now the man women lean into, clients follow, friends admire, not because you changed overnight, but because you moved every day. Becoming attractive isn't about charisma hacks or perfect timing, it's about radiating the energy of a man in motion. When a woman sees that you move your body, your goals, your life forward without needing permission or ideal conditions, she doesn't need you to pitch yourself. Your movement does the talking. So stand up. Nil forward. Turn I should into I just did. Discipline isn't glamorous, but it's magnetic. And over time, even your smallest decisions will begin to echo with a frequency that drowns out every excuse you've ever made. That frequency pulls. That frequency builds. That frequency attracts. Chapter 5. Lack of sleep. You swagger about grinding until 3 a.m. as if exhaustion were a trophy, but the mirror keeps better score than your brag file. Under eye shadows deepen like storm fronts, skin loses its sunrise, patience frays into sarcasm, and quick-wit drags its feet while you prop your eyelids open with espresso. Chronic fatigue plants invisible termites in the beams of attraction. It erodes testosterone, dulls verbal agility, slows reaction time, and magnifies trivial annoyances until they eclipse genuine connection. A single sleepless night can spike cortisol and crater empathy, the hormone cocktail that fuels flirtation. Stack those nights, and the deficit compounds like high-interest debt against your charisma. The Stoics revered cosmos, the order of nature, and recognized that disciplined rest is not laziness but alignment. Marcus Aurelius marched legions by daylight and still wrote that the body must have its measure of food and rest. 8 quality hours are not a luxury item, they are strategic capital, funding cognitive agility for courtroom ripostes, mood stability for traffic snarls, immunological defense for winter colds, and metabolic health that keeps visceral fat from hijacking hormones. When you treat sleep as negotiable, everything negotiates against you. The gym gains plateau, appetite cues misfire, creativity limps. Attraction senses the downturn before you do, because biology speaks louder than ambition. Repair begins in architecture, a darkened room cool enough to nudge core temperature downward, blackout curtains, no blue light cul-de-sacs within an hour of pillow fall. Choose a fixed bedtime like Stoics chose dawn marches, non-negotiable, rain or politics be damned. Let evening rituals decelerate stimuli, dim lamps, journal brain residue onto paper, read philosophy instead of doom scroll. Caffeine earns a curfew at noon so adenosine can reclaim its post. Alcohol exits the weekday stage because it shreds REM cycles even when it fakes drowsiness. After 7 consecutive nights of disciplined sleep, you wake to subtle revolutions. Conversation sharpens, jokes land before you second-guess phrasing. Posture straightens without conscious cue, supported by rejuvenated spinal discs. Micro-smiles return as default rather than forced bandwidth. Your eyes regain scleral brightness, broadcasting vitality beyond skincare. Women pick up these signals at a limbic level. This man's nervous system is funded, not running deficit financing. Meetings end with compliments you didn't fish for. Dates lean forward because your presence feels like sunrise, not artificial light. Notice, too, the ripple into decision-making. Well-rested brains resist impulsive dopamine grabs, junk food, gambling apps, needy texts. You buy back agency stolen nightly by fatigue. The world begins to mirror the energy you radiate, opportunities cluster, not as mystical reward, but as social algorithms responding to visible vitality. Sleep becomes the silent business partner maximizing ROI on every effort you make while awake. Reject the hustle profit selling insomnia as badge of honor. Wear discipline instead. Guard your circadian fortress with the same rigor you apply to finances or deadlift form. When dawn greets you restored, you greet others restored, and restoration itself becomes magnetic. The vibrant man does not convince the world he is worthy, he arrives already bright enough that the world simply adjusts its lens to keep him in focus. Chapter 6. Contractive Body Language. Your shoulders hunch like armor wrapped around a heart that never asked to be hidden. Your arms cross tight over your chest, not in comfort, but in protection, iron bars on the cell of your own making. Your feet shift constantly, fidgeting not out of energy but out of subtle desperation, as if your body is quietly plotting an escape before the mind agrees to leave. These gestures might feel unconscious, but their message is broadcast in high definition to everyone around you. I don't feel safe. I don't feel confident. I don't believe I belong here. In the language of attraction, posture speaks before voice, and insecurity speaks loudest of all. Stoic teachings revered posture not as vanity but as virtue made visible. Marcus Aurelius might not have written about glute engagement, but he knew a man's physical bearing revealed the interior order or chaos of his thoughts. Body language is the biography your nervous system writes in real time. And when your posture contracts, so does the perception of your presence. You don't need to slouch to be overlooked. Your frame already told the room to look away. The body shrinks before the spirit does. Contractive posture is not neutral, it is a silent surrender. Attraction reads confidence kinetically. An open chest signals grounded energy, signaling nothing to hide, nothing to fear. A still stance, feet planted shoulder-width apart, announces readiness, not aggression, but ownership of space. Measured gestures calm others even before your words can. The moment you pull back your shoulders and lift your chin parallel to the floor, a quiet transformation begins. Your breath expands, your thoughts slow down, your sentences drop into rhythm. This isn't about power posing for effect. It's about occupying the physical truth of the man you aspire to be until your body, and then your mind, accepts it as real. Train the nervous system to equate upright posture with safety. Let breath expand the ribs laterally rather than rising shallow in the chest. Unlock hands from pockets and let palms face slightly forward. Walk into a room with verticality, not speed. When you sit, lean neither back in dismissal nor forward in desperation. Align spine with purpose, shoulders with awareness. Over time, posture becomes prophecy. You stand as you wish to feel, and feelings begin to obey the shape. This reprogramming radiates outward in ways that no words can replace. A slouched man can deliver a perfect line and still seem insecure. A grounded man can pause mid-sentence and keep every eye on him. Attraction, trust, leadership, these are physical phenomena long before they become intellectual ones. A woman may not consciously register your chest opening, your head not bobbing with anxiety, your stillness under scrutiny, but her instincts do. Her body knows what her mouth won't say yet. This man is rooted, and I can exhale next to that. Reclaiming expansive posture is not about dominating a room, it's about no longer asking for permission to be in it. The Stoic ideal of autarkeia, self-sufficiency, begins in how you stand. When your bones stop apologizing for being present, your thoughts follow, your speech deepens, your magnetism sharpens. Others interpret it as leadership, but it's simply embodiment. A man who takes up space without apology gives permission to others to do the same, especially to women who are constantly forced to manage and moderate the energy of men who collapse inward or puff outward to compensate. Notice the ripple effect. Eye contact lasts longer because you're not looking up or down, you're simply with. Conversations extend naturally because you've signaled you're not in flight mode. Negotiations bend your way because your physical poise implies mental clarity. Even silence stretches in your favor because your presence fills it without needing to prove anything. Fixing your posture isn't a one-day event, it's a daily choice, a correction every time you catch yourself folding inward. Set reminders. Mirror check not for vanity, but for alignment. Let gravity draw your heels deeper into the earth and your chest forward into the moment. The body you inhabit becomes the character you play. And if you play him often enough, he becomes who you are, not a mask, but a truth excavated from beneath years of contraction. In a crowded world of slumped backs and hunched shoulders, the man who stands tall, calm, still, and uncollapsed becomes a lighthouse. Women sense him before he speaks. Not because he's loud. Not because he's broad. But because his body told the room, I belong here. And the room believed him. Chapter 7. No sense of humor. A man without humor is a violin tuned but never played, technically functional yet devoid of music. Humor, like bowing across those strings, sends vibrations through the room that tilt heads, soften shoulders, and prime hearts for harmony. Laughter acts as social lubricant, dissolving friction before it can heat into conflict, and as a release valve that lets built-up tension hiss harmlessly into the air. It is also cognitive agility in disguise. Wordplay, timing, and absurd juxtaposition prove a mind quick enough to notice patterns and brave enough to twist them for joy. When you greet every minor setback as apocalypse or treat every conversation as a courtroom debate, social energy stalls like traffic at dusk, red lights stretching in silent frustration. People sense they must tiptoe lest a joking misfire trigger your earnest lecture, so they withhold spark and spontaneity. Stoicism, contrary to its stone-faced reputation, actually champions laughter at life's absurdity. Marcus Aurelius scribbled reminders to smile at fate's theatrics, because mockery of fickle fortune disarms fear. A Stoic laugh says, "You can roll the dice, universe, but I won't let them rattle my peace." This perspective magnetizes companionship. Who doesn't want to stand beside the person who can grin at chaos and therefore reduce its bite? Cultivating humor isn't about memorizing punchlines. It starts with mining your daily mishaps for story beats, the coffee you spilled down a white shirt 5 minutes before a pitch, the autocorrect catastrophe that turned kind regards into king grids. Frame them not as embarrassments but as sketches that prove you survived. Study timing the way a drummer practices tempo, pausing a heartbeat before the reveal, letting silence tee up the laugh. Most important, laugh at yourself first. Self-directed wit is a lighthouse signaling security. It tells others you have nothing fragile to protect and therefore they can relax their own armor. Once you can chuckle at your own stumbles, outward whimsy flows naturally, switching from defensive sarcasm to playful generosity. You riff on the absurdity of rush-hour yoga mats dangling from convertible roofs or the existential crisis of a GPS rerouting mid-journey, and people feel invited into a shared wink rather than targeted by a barb. Humor's ripple effect is powerful. A teasing grin during a tense meeting can puncture spiraling anxiety, turning rivals into co-problem solvers. A clever hyperbole about airport security lines converts boredom into camaraderie. Women, especially, read humor as a proxy for emotional intelligence. A man who can generate lightness under stress likely won't implode when the mortgage rate jumps or a toddler smears peanut butter on the dog. Playful laughter signals safe spontaneity, the promise that ordinary Tuesday evenings might erupt into dance kitchen silliness rather than Netflix inertia. Practically, sharpen humor muscles by consuming variety, stand-up specials for rhythm, witty essays for structure, improvised podcasts for nimble transitions. Rehearse observation, narrate in your head what's funny about the rain negotiating with city pigeons or the silent drama in a grocery store checkout line. Share these mini-monologues with friends until you sense which details spark delight. Over time, humor layers into your tone like seasoning into cast iron, subtle yet unmistakable. Remember, the Stoic sage aims for equanimity, not solemnity. Joy is part of virtue because a buoyant spirit travels farther and lifts companions along the route. Marry that buoyancy with wisdom and you become the rare man who steadies storms while still lighting fireworks of laughter. That rhythm, self-teasing security followed by inclusive levity, makes conversation feel like music. Women lean in because every note promises both safety and surprise, two pillars of lasting attraction. So tune your violin, then play it with mischief, let rooms resonate with proof that seriousness and silliness can, and should, share the same refined soul. Seneca left us a challenge that fits tonight perfectly: cut away all that is unnecessary, and what remains will be true. You now know the 7 unnecessary habits that smother your presence and mute your magnetism. Choose one, just one, before you sleep, and design tomorrow around its removal. Then tell the brotherhood in the comments which habit goes first so we can keep you honest. Hit like if this episode carved clarity, subscribe for the next Stoic upgrade, and share this video with any man still wondering why effort isn't translating into attraction. Eliminate what weakens you and watch how effortlessly the right people, opportunities, and moments rush in to fill the space you've cleared. See you next week, leaner, lighter, and infinitely more compelling.